So I actually have 4 crayfish in this 75-gallon tank. An electric blue lobster, as you can see. I also have 2 of these guys, the Australian red claw crayfish. I have 2 of them. Again, I have 2 of them. And then I have my fireball lobster. Fireball lobster at the moment is one of the bigger ones. The biggest one at the moment is the Australian red claw, who's over there. One was called R smaller than the other because he got a fight with one of the other crayfish. I do recommend, if you're going to get an Australian red claw, to have at least a 75-gallon tank. The reason being because they are very active. They're relatively inactive crayfish, active for crayfish, especially at night, and they're large size, as they normally get about 10 inches long when it's a female and about a foot long when it's a male. Now males do sometimes get over a foot long, but it's not as common. You also have my rubber lip pleco. I have 2 of these guys, and you can see the striped Raphael in the background. Striped Raphael in that turtle shell also, which, by the way, is pretty cool. He's in the turtle shell, though you can't really see him. Then you have the spotted Raphael in that jaguar skull, and then. But my favorite is probably the Australian red claw. He gets about 10 inches, like I said, he gets about 10 inches long as a female, and the male will get about a foot long, if not more. See if I can't get a glance at the one in the skull. Can't get him. Kind of see him a little bit. He isn't very big at the moment. They're only about 2 inches long compared to the fireball lobster, who is about, I'd say about 3 or 4 inches. And the electric blue, which is about 4 or 5 inches. So I used to have this in the tank, but I took it out as it was creating problems and causing the crayfish to escape and helping them escape the tank. Also, you have the exaltals over here, but the focus of this video is not the exaltals, it's the crayfish. Now, you can keep crayfish with fish. As you can see, I have several catfish. However, the catfish you get, you have to be careful. You want to make sure they're either bigger than the crayfish or they have good defense, like the striped Raphael and spotted Raphael, or that they're good hiders. If not, they will become crayfish food. I also have some great Danios, giant Danios. They're pretty cool. They normally swim high in the tank, but these 2 tend to keep low, I guess, because that's, I don't know. And then the Australian red claw, one of them likes to hide in this little log decoration, which is pretty cool. I like him to hide in it. That's what I got it for. And you can kind of see him through the crack in the log, but the Australian red claws are cool. And then naturally, as they get bigger, the color will change slightly. But the electric blue, the difference between the electric blue crayfish and angelfish and all that, all your colored fish, is the electric blue is naturally that color. He is not bred to be that color, he's just naturally that color. Now, angelfish are bred to look like what they look like. However, the electric blue and the fireball lobster are not bred to look like what they do. They just naturally have that look, that color on them. So again, the answer to your question, can crayfish be kept with fish? The answer is yes. I catch crayfish for most of my life. I'm 18 years old, and I have kept crayfish ever since I was 4. Now, Most people will tell you you cannot keep them, but I tend to disagree. It just depends on how big the tank is, and how many crayfish you have, and what kind. Now, what kind of fish and what kind of crayfish that is. Now, the Australian red claws, I highly recommend at least a 75 gallon if you get two. If you only have one, I still recommend at least a 60 gallon because, well, I take that back, at least a 40 gallon because they need lots of room. But like I said, there's no magic recipe. But I do not recommend getting bottom feeders that are not good at hiding or who don't have good defenses. By good defenses, I mean spines along the sides of their bodies or fins that are also basically giant spines. If they don't have those, I do not recommend getting the catfish as they will become crayfish food. And if there's more than one crayfish and they're of the same species, one of them will chase the fish while the other one rests. And when the other one starts resting, the other one will chase the fish. And they will eventually wear the fish down to where it's slow enough they can catch it and eat it. Crayfish are very aggressive. I'm not going to lie. They've been known to eat baby birds that fall in their holes in the wild. Because me and one of my friends had a rusty crayfish. If you don't know, that's a crayfish native to Kentucky. And Kentucky, the southern United States. And it was in a fish bowl, and the thing was about 4 inches long. And a little baby canary fell in its bowl one day, and me and my friend came home and it had killed and eaten the baby canary. So it just depends on what kind of crayfish you have, whether it can go with fish. Now, if you have rusty crayfish and you choose to put them in your tank, I do not recommend. See, my electrical officer is doing his defensive pose. But if you do choose to go with wild crayfish, I do not recommend putting wild crayfish with fish, as they will work together to eat them. Crayfish may seem dumb, but do not underestimate brain power but do not underestimate the sheer determination of a crayfish. If they really want to eat a fish, they will. I've seen instances where one of my friends, he had a rusty crayfish, and he put it in with a 7.5 inch long catfish. Catfish eventually got to around 10 inches, but his Australian red claw, his rusty crayfish, got around 10 inches because it grew in the aquarium and not in the wild. So it made it to the size of around 10 inches, and it eventually ate the stomach out of his catfish. His catfish was laying on the bottom one day and was sitting real still. His gills weren't moving, so my friend went to grab him and pick him up. And when he picked him up, he realized that the stomach had been eaten out of his catfish by the rusty crayfish. So again, crayfish are very aggressive. They do eat fish. But if you're going to keep them, is it an absolute no to keep them with fish? No. The answer to that is no. You can keep them with fish. You just have to be careful what kind of fish and the size. You have to keep in mind the size of the crayfish, the size of the fish, and the capabilities of that crayfish. Now, crayfish will also escape your tank if you're not careful. I've had this happen before, and it's not fun. Now, especially when you have a $80 crayfish and you lose it because it escaped the tank. Now, and then you find it 3 days later dead. My alleged blue crayfish is kind of exploring. And that's what crayfish will do a lot. They will explore the tank. They will try to establish territories. Now, if you make it clear that your tank there are no territories, fights are less common. However, if you let them establish their territory, that is also good, because it lets them know that, that your tank is a safe place. Now, first, crayfish probably will hide a little bit, just for the fact that they don't know the tank very well and they don't know its habitats. But after a few weeks, they should start to move around a little bit, and you should start seeing them during the day. If you have any questions, please comment below, and I will try to answer the questions.